That is a great question. Philanthropy is a number of things to me. It's impact, it's improvement, it's betterment, whether it's in the community, whatever your mission is, it's making a difference. So that can entail a number of things. And having a finance background, I think of it similar to venture capital and taking a gamble, trying something new, taking a different approach to a solution in your community. So it's taking chances that other people may not be able to take.
To me, philanthropy is one piece in the puzzle to try and make this world a better place.
Well, the technical rationale for philanthropy is it's organizations that use some form of endowment to provide some sort of social good or to change some sort of community activity to a more positive direction.
Philanthropy is essentially giving back and investing in people and projects that work primarily to improve the community in an impactful way.
Well, philanthropy is the love of life, and that's the Greek definition of philanthropy. And I think it is really a demonstration of how we as a society show that we love life, we love people. And I think that organized philanthropy should be promoting that in every form or fashion.
Philanthropy to me is helping the community, helping people, helping them just better the communities and better the schools and to help better people.
Philanthropy to me is the art of giving back to society. It could involve time, treasure, or talent, which are the 3 T's that people often talk about. Giving of your time is contributing in a volunteer way. Giving of your talent, giving of your talent is using your expertise in ways that might be useful to nonprofits or the social sector. And giving treasure is obviously giving financial support to the sector.
Philanthropy, to me, is the ability to properly and nimbly respond to the most challenging issues facing communities.
So for me, when I think of philanthropy, I actually think of 2 things. One is that it's broader than what we might define as philanthropy, which some people say is the love of mankind and the things that we do to benefit society together. I think of it as much broader than that. And I also think about it in the context of the family that I work with, the Fisher family, and some of the driving values that we have that are based in the Jewish traditions. So actually in Hebrew, there isn't a word that translates to philanthropy or charity, for example. The closest word, and the word that's used, is tzedakah. And tzedakah really means justice. We don't do this work because it feels good. We do this work because it's right. We do this work because we must. To me, this is about, and the way I see it, philanthropy is about social justice. It's about what we must do together to care for each other and to make an impact on some of the most egregious problems that we have, and to capitalize on some of the best opportunities we have to make a difference in this world.
To me, I think of the regular definition, of course, is using resources and your time, your being to give to others. However, I think for me personally, philanthropy is being there, being in the work, being where you matter somewhere. So that's what philanthropy means to me, someplace where I matter.
Philanthropy, from probably a formal perspective, it is a field by which individuals make investment of their personal assets for the benefit of the broader community and the world.
Philanthropy is in one sense, is looked at as a group or collective-minded individual who decides to transfer his wealth, tries to help a population of society that needs that financial support. And philanthropy obviously has to be a philosophy of ideals that understands those needs and circumstances while giving unselfishly.
Philanthropy means a lot to a lot of people. I view it as just any kind of act, any act of kindness and generosity, purely like doing it purely for the sake of humanity, like, without having to ask anything in return. It's just for the well-being of everyone.
Philanthropy to me is dollars that should be put in play to do good in society. However, I think that philanthropy is fundamentally flawed with the way that it puts the dollars forward. We can get into that maybe in the future, but I think we need a full reset in philanthropy. I don't think we understand the ramifications of how we move the dollars through the system and then the actions that we cause, the harm that we actually cause with our dollars as well as the good. So I think philanthropy, it's hard for me to define it because I'm actually trying in a lot of ways to blow it up in its traditional form to try to do more good with the capital we have.
I want to say it was Carol. Carol was the first person that I actually met that she's the first person that I knew was a philanthropist, and I saw the big difference she made.
It may have been Charles Stewart, growing up, being reared in the city of Flint, and my playing such a pivotal role in that community. That particular foundation funded several youth development programs that I was fortunate enough to be a part of.
So I think there are a couple people that I would articulate as people who form my vision of philanthropy. The first is my grandmother, Frances Page, who was a 4'10" woman, and she was a community activist. She was a mother to 10 children. She was an evangelist. And some of my very first memories were of this woman who had lost her husband and who was single, giving and packing food away to give to our neighbors when they didn't have it, or allowing them to come live in her house when their heat wasn't on in the middle of the winter, or organizing block clubs because she felt like it was important for the community to take on the future in order for it to be successful. And then the second person that I would call up is actually Garland Yates, who was the first program officer of a foundation that I really got to know. And Garland worked for the Casey Foundation when I was a young professional. And he really helped me understand the power of philanthropy, the power of how you make the right investments, and how when you make those right investments, if you ask the right questions, that it can really pivot you or pivot the person that's doing the work to be far more successful than they would have ever been before. And I often rely on a series of quotes from both of those people because their imprint was so powerful in my life.
I think, growing up in the African American church and recognizing that church folks will pool resources to help a member in trouble or to help some sort of community activity or to bring some goodwill to a particular person, family, or community. I think that, to me, was the first insight into philanthropy and into group giving.
I do. I feel like the role that we have as staff members in a family foundation and things that I do in the broader community, things that I do voluntarily, still focus on helping other people achieve their dreams, because that's my dream. So in the foundation that I serve right now, we focus on securing and improving the Jewish community, providing resources because that community also does a great deal for other communities. both here in Detroit and in Israel. The work that we're doing in education, both in early childhood and college and career, and then arts and culture and the importance of that in our lives. And health is the fourth area that we focus on, primarily HIV. I see myself in this role as helping to make change through connecting people who have these common dreams but have different capabilities and different resources. And in that way, I help to make tremendous change. And I'm very lucky to do that both professionally and then also in my own volunteer work and in the giving that my wife and I do and that my son and daughter do with us in our own personal giving. So in that way, I feel lucky that my avocation and vocation let me be a change maker 24 hours a day, which is a lot of fun.
No, I don't. I feel like, and if you look up in a dictionary or whatever, like everyone has a different meaning of what it is. But I don't feel like I deserve that title or I fit in under that because I'm doing it, just purely for the sake of just doing it. I want to do it because that's what makes me happy. I don't need a title to, label something or make me happy. No, I don't. I understand where you said it. I was like, oh, you're saying you're all about giving and stuff, but then why don't you call yourself a philanthropist? I feel like I should be doing more in order to be given that official title, and people do actually, me giving a few dollars here and there, holding a project here and there, doesn't make me a philanthropist. Like, I feel like people who are philanthropists are always giving. It's their job. But I feel like I don't want to associate myself as a philanthropist because it is my job as a human, but it is not my job as a career. But I feel I would consider it as a career because if I would still be helping people, and I honestly would consider it as a career. I would. It just hit me like, okay, philanthropist, I can see myself doing that. Like, I would not have even thought about it. Like, so it is possible.
You probably have to define things differently, and I think, actually, with younger generations, I think there are new definitions being formed with like the millennials and all that. Because I don't necessarily think a lot of them would want to be considered philanthropists, even if they're solving. So like social investors, impact, or things like that. I think, again, to me, philanthropist has a connotation of old, stodgy, a bit elitist, versus other things. So I don't know exactly what we should call us, right? But I think that there are, to me, some negative connotations to it.
So formally, it just was a natural fit through the work that I've done on the federal government and the nonprofit side. So I wanted to transition to have an opportunity to sit on the other side of the table and understand that policies and systems actually change communities. Programs are powerful. John Jackson once said that programs are powerful, but policy is progress, right? So having an opportunity and being drawn, if you will, to the philanthropic institutions that actually drive policy and drive systems change, it was a natural fit for me. But prior to that, my first introduction to philanthropy, not even knowing it, was through giving at my church. I wouldn't say that was the pivot, right, for me professionally. It did give me opportunities. The pivot for me professionally was working and living in communities that were marginalized, and seeing groups of people that were marginalized, and thinking of different ways to not address but approach their issues. And that's when I learned about philanthropy as a profession. But as a young person, it was just having access to programs that I didn't have to pay for because some other philanthropic financial arm took care of the cost.
I did not necessarily choose philanthropy as a career choice. It chose me. I kind of stumbled into the field. So I wouldn't say that I even had an understanding of what philanthropy meant But once I got into the field and realized that, I guess I thought of it in terms of the family, the Skillman family, and working for that foundation, and understanding that they left their fortune behind to make a difference, and the mission was so important to me. So technically, the Skillmans were my first connection to philanthropy because I really didn't understand it or have an appreciation for it.
I probably had a number of different role models growing up, but probably the biggest role model in my life was probably my brother Michael, my oldest brother, who was the second oldest out of 9 children. And probably the reason for that is because Michael, at a very early age, my parents put a lot of responsibility on Michael. And he embraced that responsibility. He assumed that role. And so he was always a kind of a second parent in our family. You know, he set the standard for doing the right thing. You know, Michael was the guy who stopped bullies from beating up on people. Michael was the guy who didn't allow men to beat up on women. Michael was the guy who would shovel the snow of senior citizens and on the block. You know, Mike was that guy. You know, as you know, my brother passed in January. But at his memorial service, my other brother described him as a true American hero. And so Mike was my hero growing up. And I just wanted to be like Mike.
My primary role model, I would say, was my father. And he was my role model. He was a role model to me, and I didn't even realize how much of a role model he was for me until later on in life. He would give the shirt off his back, and a lot of times that's all he had. And he has impacted everything in my life. He was the guy that said, you're going to college. Not sure how you're going to pay for it, but I'll get you there. But you're going to college. So everything from, you know, getting up every day and getting out and doing something, right? Whether it's work or volunteering or something. He did that on into retirement. From the way that I, like I was saying, get up in the morning, get out and do something every day, to the way I raise my kids, that guy's had a dramatic impact on me in my life.
My dad definitely. He worked really hard to provide for his family and to get to where he is now in his life, and just always made sure that his family was first and that we were being provided for. And then he additionally, you know, taught me to really open up my eyes to the world and the struggles of what goes on in the world, and to really not only be locked in your own perspective, but to, you know, take a moment to look around and see what other people might be thinking, and, you know, to put yourself in other people's shoes.
So I have many role models, you know what I mean, whether it's through spirituality and with God, or through my parents. But in particular, as I went through my struggles as an adolescent, I mean, I wasn't necessarily somebody who was involved in gangs, but I did have my encounters with gangs as a student, just a kid in the community or whatever. But I can say with one individual that kept me on the right track through one of the most critical periods in my life, the senior year of high school, would definitely be Johnny Green, who was a teacher at the school, who was also a graduate of Alabama A&M University, the reason in which I decided to attend the university. During that time, he had, you know, mentored me, coached me in different areas about how to be more responsible as I tried to pursue my college career, but he also kept me knowledgeable about the different pitfalls that I may have to deal with as a young black male. And so I definitely say he has had a huge influence.
So I'm not religious, but I think that in the religion that I grew up in, it's part of it is giving back, and it's, you know, a value that I've carried on throughout my life. And I just think that that's something that I try to preach to people in my life, whether it's youth below me or my peers, that it's not all about you, you know, and maybe it's as simple as giving someone $1 that's asking for it, but, you know, this life isn't just about what you get, it's about what you give, and that can help make not only your life be fulfilled, but those around you. And, you know, think of yourself as a person in a community, not as an individual.
Well, I think one of the core skills is relationships. And what I mean by that is that you have to understand who you're working with, what they're trying to do, and where they are developmentally. I mean, the organization and the people. And your job is to understand, to assess that, and to help bring them along or to help strengthen them through their ideas and their thinking. And that just takes a level of intuitiveness and insight that I think most people underestimate, that strengthens and builds strong relationships. I think the second set of skills that you probably need to have is understanding data, understanding what impact looks like, understanding metrics. Not that I believe everything can be measured, but I think we have to have an intentionality on asking that question. If we don't ask the question, we'll never know if we're moving the needle. And I think that you just have to have this, what would I say? You have to have this, demanding desire to get to impact, because I think in philanthropy, we sometimes capture, not sometimes, quite often, we capture what our impact is based on what the inputs are. How much money we give, how quickly we give it, not what the outputs are. What did that money do? What change or did it create? Did it improve someone's life, or did it improve society? And I think we have to get stronger at that. I think the third thing I would say is to be a critical listener and friend and thinker. I think we have to. Philanthropy is about people bringing good ideas to you. Nobody really ever brings a bad idea to a foundation. Now, that idea probably doesn't fit that foundation's interest, but everybody is doing charitable and honorable work. And so we have to be critical friends, critical thinkers, critical allies in that work, because what we want to do is help the work pivot from charity to strategic and impactful. And so having that sensibility, I think, can strengthen you in philanthropy.
Believe it or not, complex liberal arts grounded facts or talent is what we need. We need generalists who can think, who can reason, who can work together across lots of boundaries, which means being incredibly inclusive. It means assuming that somebody else has knowledge from the get-go, from the minute you meet them, rather than assuming they don't. We need creativity, we need innovation, we need passion. Oh my God, do we need perseverance? Because this sector work that we do is hard, it's complex, it's frustrating, it's resource demanding, it's emotionally draining, right? So we have a lot to serve, we have a lot to give, and we have a lot to do in terms of training up young people to be able to be in this field. I'm not suggesting that specific talents like financial literacy skills, budget management skills, project management related work, those kinds of things are also skills and talents that we need young people to go out and acquire so that they can devote those kinds of talents to the sector.
I think it's such a privilege to be in the role that I'm in. there are not many people that can say that what they do every day helps to change the lives of children and families. And why philanthropy is important and why this particular role is important is that we have an opportunity to try things that have never been tried before. There's a level of innovation, there's a level of risk, all around changing the human condition for positive. And I think that opportunity is something that is unique to philanthropy, but it's also something that very few people have an opportunity to partake in. And so every day I wake up excited about the opportunity to do good, to make change, to have other people think about the world a little differently, to try something that's never been tried before, and also sometimes to fail, because through failure you also learn. And so for me to have that experience and to work in an organization that's fully supportive of that makes me happy every day.
Well, I think it's important for us to cultivate talent in general. I mean, I just think that we have to create an open space for people to come in and create value. I think that talent is, it creates exponential value. So talent is, I know some people think about talent as a competitive source. I actually think if you're not competing with talent, you actually grow market share with talent. And so I think the more we contribute and figure out how to support young people, the better we will be, because we will create an opportunity for more solutions. And I think we have to do a better job of hearing their voices and making sure that their voices are instituted into our thinking. And so I think that some of the work that we've done and our leadership work in general in communities have shown that, where I'm often just extraordinarily happy to hear young people who articulate a clear understanding of what the problems are. And they're wrestling with the ideas about how you fix that. And I think often in society, we don't want to give the flexibility for young people to fail. And I think that that's an important thing. Like, you develop leadership by working at issues, sometimes succeeding and sometimes failing, but learning from those failures to pick yourself back up, pivot, and do a stronger and better job. I think some of the ways that we could better support young people, I think leaders, people who are in positions of authority and power like myself, need to do more to create space for young people to have the kind of conversations, the mentorship, and the sponsorship for them to access and be a part of the decision-making table. I think I do that a little bit. I wish I did it more. And I think that we need somebody who's actually telling us and reminding us to do it, because sometimes you get so busy in the work. It's not that you don't think it's important. It's just really about whether or not you have the bandwidth to keep it present when there are so many other competing priorities. The second thing that I'm a big fan of is creating leadership and fellowships. So really focusing on how you build leadership among young people. And one of the best ways to do that is to give them stretch assignments, give them things that they don't know how to do and let them learn, and coach them along the way. And also provide them access to some of the best leaders and thinkers that you can, that can help them cultivate their path and strengthen their skill sets. So those are the two things that I think are extraordinarily important. But I think that, this is a question we really should be asking young people. What do they want us to do, and how can we help them?
I was very fortunate because I found the social impact sector while I was in college, and found a love for fundraising and philanthropy and all of that when I was in college. So when I got out of college with a finance degree, fundraising was what I wanted to do, and I wanted to be in our sector. But that was very unusual at the time. So, and I think it's still rather unusual. So I think we need more of a focus on talent recruitment, retention, and excitement for our sector, which I prefer not to call nonprofit. So about 2.5 years ago, I made a promise to myself I'd never use that word unless I was describing why I don't use the word. And so for me, nonprofit, there's a wonderful history in it. I think we should all be very proud of it, but it doesn't describe what we're passionate about. And so we're the only sector described by what we're not. So I'd rather describe it by why we wake up in the morning. And we wake up in the morning to have an impact on society's most difficult problems or biggest opportunities. So for me, I'd much rather call it the social impact sector. And I think that that might actually draw more talent in as well. And so for me, I think that too many young people make it through high school, make it even through college before they realize that there are amazing careers in this sector, regardless of what you call it. That there's a wonderful living you can make in this sector, and there's a wonderful life that you can make doing this work. And too many people find it later. So I think we need to do more things like the group Learning to Give is trying to infuse philanthropy education into actual education where philanthropy type examples or tzedakah or social impact type examples would be used in algebra classes or English classes, so people could really have this infused in them. Imagine if there were as many young people saying, I'm going to go into the social impact sector and make a difference and make a life of it, as there are people who are saying, I want to go work on Wall Street and make a ton of money. With that same passion, and if we could make it just as in vogue to have worked in the business field or worked on Wall Street to say, I worked on Fenkel in Detroit, because there are real people there, and that's hard work, and that work is valued. I think that the pace of change in our world would accelerate dramatically. There are too many young people who are impassioned about something and then feel they need to find a job so that they can have the resources to then on the weekends do what they're passionate about. And I think if we did this well, and I know that we can, actually they'd find a way to meld their passion with their career and make a major difference, make a life, not be, destitute, and actually do quite well and make a difference at the same time. Whether they're on the fundraising side, the fund granting side, the actual doing direct service side, it's I should say it this way, it's going to be amazing when we get that done.
I didn't start out in philanthropy, and I think that there's a benefit to philanthropy in having people who are outside of the philanthropic space come in. I think that sometimes philanthropy feels really insulated to me, and it's a bubble. And where everyone who's in the philanthropic space understands the language, but that cross-pollination of corporate, philanthropic, religious, education just finally seems to be blurring a little bit with some of the social capital type of organizations that are coming up. A lot of them are in Ann Arbor and things like that, where there's a mixing of a business model that can support the community. So I'm really a person who's in favor of cross-pollination. I think that someone who comes in out of college, I don't think they have enough experience in order to really, really understand how to do that, in my opinion. So I would tell a young person to get as many experiences as they can, volunteer. That can be part of your life, whether you go in the for-profit arena or whether you go in philanthropic area, to really, really follow their passion about what really, really drives them as a person, so that work is work, and you should be compensated for work, but work is something that you enjoy. And, sometimes we tell a kid, you're good in math and science, you should be an engineer. But if they love music, why do they have to be an engineer? Why can't they be something different? And, maybe they might end up doing music and coming into philanthropy in a different way once they have experienced the full breadth of music, And to me, that would be a benefit for the philanthropic space. To have more people who've had experiences outside of philanthropy. I think that some of the models that the traditional foundation has used, the benevolent banker model, has failed in many ways.
It's great that you start early and find your passion. Not that it's a bad thing to find it later like I did, but find what you love to do. To go to school full time and learn what would have been if what could have been rather if you went to school full time at a major university. Having that college expertise behind your belt as far as college life, learning. I've had the same friends since high school. Maybe getting not another level. Some more friends in college would have been a good opportunity for me. So I would have told myself, go to school full time and not work. It's good to have that dual experience because people like that when you're applying for different positions. However, I would have told myself to go to school full time and gain that college experience of what others had. Maybe I would have found my passion a little earlier.
I wish I had figured things out a whole lot sooner. I consider myself a slow learner. I'm still in my early 50s and still thinking I'm figuring things out. So probably I would give advice to my younger self around the idea of find mentors faster, find people that you want to emulate and get to know, and turn them into your mentors. Probably, that's probably my biggest one because I think when you find the right mentors, you get lots of seeds that lead you down the pathway of building your career. I would say that the most important mentors of mine, I still follow the guidance they gave me 35 years ago. So that's probably that would be my biggest insights to myself. Oh, and don't doubt your inner gut. Don't doubt your instinct. There were lots of times when people tried to sway me from what I instinctively knew was my path. And while I could not define my path, I knew I was on it. And I knew when I wasn't on it. And I think that we underestimate that kind of organic, intuitive knowledge that we all have.
Okay, I would have also probably told the younger Rebecca, do what's really in your heart. But I feel like I didn't realize what was really in my heart and what I had a passion for till I started exploring, on my own. So I would have probably told the younger Rebecca, that sounds so nice, the younger Rebecca. Okay, I would have probably told her, to go talk to people. Find a role model, someone that, I would have probably told her to go find a role model.
In the fourth grade, I tell people often in the fourth grade I became a man. Literally, I had a teacher during what was supposed to be a normal school day. It was a Caucasian teacher. He walked up to me and tapped me on my shoulder and called me an endangered species. And he literally encouraged me to drop out of school at 9 years old. And he said I was never going to be anything because I was a young black male. When I saw him again in the 12th grade, I was at a library. The library that I now chair, the board of trustees at, it's so ironic. But I saw him at that library and he said, David McGee, well, what are you doing here? I said, I'm studying. He said, oh, I thought you'd been dropped out by now. True story. So in the fourth grade, that's when I became serious because I knew I had a decision to make that I could, that could either make, what he told me could make my career, or it could break my career. But yeah, in the fourth grade, I became a man. And if I saw him today, I would shake his hand and tell him thank you.
I still haven't started thinking seriously about my career plans. I'm sorry. I think for me, I've always been much more lackadaisical when it comes to career planning. I'm a risk taker. I'm willing to take risk in my career. I'm willing to say, hey, I'll try this, and if it works out, good. If it doesn't, it's a learning opportunity to do something else. And so I won't say that I'm the most planful when it comes to my career. I actually don't think about it as far as, where do I want to be as far as title or positionality. I think of it more of what sort of experiences do I want to have in my professional portfolio, and where do I think I can find the most joy and have the most fun and learn the most. And then from there, things work out. But
I used to think of diversity in terms of race, and diversity is beyond that. I think that the challenge in philanthropy for diversity is in diversity of income and sharing the power. So, yes, you need people from different walks of life, different cultures, different sexual orientation, different ages, but also different socioeconomic areas. I mean, you want to turn a board upside down, bring someone on it who's been homeless. Bring someone on it who is from the target group that we're trying to change. Bring a kid on the board. Someone who's fresh out of high school, who decided not to go to college. You want to put a board on its knees, and I'm just saying that I'm being overly dramatic, but the boards that we have in philanthropy do not mimic the population that we're trying to serve. And by putting someone who is of a certain demographic also doesn't change that. Because if they're of the same age, if they're of the same socioeconomic area, so middle class to upper middle class, and we're trying to work on poverty and homelessness, I'm not saying that's what's happening here at Skillman, but we really need to change that model. I think that would make a difference.
Yeah, no, so I think that's a big deal. I think diversity of experience. Actually, if you look at my little statement up there, that we will embrace and share openly in our differences, because innovation lives in the spaces where diverse thoughts collide around solutions to vexing problems. If we have all people that think alike trying to solve problems, we can get the same solutions, right? And so I think philanthropy needs, right, here's my biases, but put them on the table, right? I think there are far too many left-leaning people in philanthropy, far too many people, Republican, right-leaning people, business people. And so I'd say we've thought about diversity from a race and gender perspective a lot in philanthropy, and I think our staff reflects that. Our staff does not reflect diverse thought. That's something that I think is really, really important, that we are open to others' viewpoints. And I don't think, by and large, the space is. I think Skillman's getting better about it, but I don't think the space is. And again, I don't think it's a left-right thing. I'm not saying the left-wing people are flawed. I'm saying that you're missing half the potential solutions, right? And that actually it's where those two meet in the middle that most of the answers are going to be found. But if it's all one way or the other, we're not going to get there. And so I think that we should figure out ways to bring in people with diverse backgrounds, diverse skill sets, diverse thought into the space, right? And so I think the more diverse kind of experiences and diverse Rolodexes we can employ, the better off we are.
So, how do we measure success? There are so many different ways to measure success. And again, in philanthropy, I think sometimes because we use that term, we start thinking about foundations, which are only 15% of the philanthropic pie, right? So a full 80% of this money comes from living individuals like us writing checks at our kitchen tables, and young people putting service hours in and so forth. I think success truly is measured by are we making an impact systemically and sustainably on these issues? So if we've invested our time, treasure, talent on an effort that makes an impact on the work, so let's say, for example, in early childhood, that we put all of our focus on that, and for the time that we're focused on it, kindergarten readiness, which is a key measure of success in early childhood, moves. If the needle moves. But when we're no longer able to invest those dollars, in particular, if that measure moves back, then that's not success. So many times we measure it by, here's the intervention, here's the sort of the pre-state, here's the post-state. And that's interesting for a period of time, but if there isn't sustainable change in human behavior and the passion of the people inside the issues, then more than likely it will just swing, the pendulum will swing back. So I think we're going to continue to wrestle with how we measure success, but I think that that definition needs to be defined by the people inside the issues that we're hoping to face together, because what success looks like to them is very different than potentially what it might look like to us. The organizations that are working on it with them and the people who help fund those organizations, we need to come up with a combined definition of what that looks like. And ultimately, it's in this context for us that we're talking about with young people choosing things. For a young person to make it through the educational system, starting all the way back with a mother who's healthy and safe and has a good birth experience, so that that child can make a decision about how they're going to invest their life productively for our society and the globe. And if that child isn't hindered by something outside of their control that they didn't create, so that they can make a good decision around that, ultimately that's success for us. Equal opportunity for those kids to make a major impact in our world. That's a really big, hairy sort of answer, but we struggle with it so mightily in our sector. And there's organizations that are focused on how do you measure success. But I think ultimately it's about people being able to make individual decisions to help another person, and that they've got the resources, whether it's intellect, time, and so on, that they can help somebody else.
It's the challenge of the 21st century. We've made it so clear in the for-profit sector that profit is success. One measure, one bottom line. When you talk about our sector, whether it's philanthropy, nonprofit, or public sector, those three aspects, it becomes a challenge, because the kinds of metrics that help us know if we're successful are often things like, are the recipients of our philanthropy happier?
I don't have a specific charge. Again, the world could look totally different. What I do want to do is just leave some breadcrumbs, right? Just leave a trail so they'll understand what it takes to get to certain places. And once they get there, they can execute in a fashion that's beneficial to them. So my only, I guess, the charge would be for them to take advantage of every opportunity presented to them. But I mean, my role is just to leave the breadcrumbs so they'll know how to get there, and then they'll take it from there. I believe the next generation is a lot smarter than me, so they'll be able to take it from there.
I honestly already see it. Like it is much more diverse, and I feel it is probably, I won't say my whole generation, but I guess the people that I hang around with or choose to hang around, I want to see them, helping out the young people. Like I just absolutely, because I see so much potential in people that are younger than me. I feel like if I was to go back, I would have done this and that differently, And I feel like we need to, because we've already been through 20, 21 years of our lives. So I feel like our generation needs to reach out to the ones that are, just starting their career and whatnot, and just mentor, just be there for them. Because that, like I said, it's what everything does kind of go back to intelligence and whatnot. But that's biological. Biology does say that intelligence is from biology. but so much is environmental and nurturing, and how we shape it is nurture. Like we need to nurture these students, or kids in general. So I see my generation reaching out to the younger ones and helping them out in the future for a better future.
Today's kids are our future, and I think them being able to put their input would help a lot.
Like, step up to the plate, ask questions. There are opportunities that are untapped. And I think if you don't see something, carve the way and make it happen. Don't let the structures of an organization or of a way of thinking stop you from trying to do something new, trying to do something innovative, trying to do something good for others. I think many people are hesitant to step forward and claim their leadership role. And I think young people, particularly the young people of this generation, don't have a lot of those fears that some of us who've gone through for a while hold on to every day. And I don't want young people to lose that. Don't let, getting knocked down or being told no or seeing obstacles and barriers stop you from always believing that you can do more, that you can do better, and that you can do it with the zeal and the zest that you have in youth. I think some folks get jaded the longer they are in the career track. And I think always tapping into what that youthful exuberance is something that we all need to do. And I think by having enough young people around you, it helps keep you grounded in that. It helps keep you excited and thinking about the opportunities and the possibilities. And so for me, my message to young people is hold on to those possibilities and to that joy, because that's what will sustain you over the long haul.